Kia ora and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with New Zealand artists. I'm your host, Mandy Yarkich. These conversations are intimate, uplifting and insightful. The guests on this show have absolutely enriched my life, and I'm sure their stories will have the same effect on you. Thank you so much for joining me to listen to these amazing people speak about what drives them, the way they work, and their personal takes on life. Hi, and welcome back to Creative Matters. This week I'm speaking with Stephen Templer. Steve is an artist and illustrator previously from Wellington and now living in Kumeu in the northwest of Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland. His art practice includes street art, murals, graphic design, prop and concept design, illustration for children's books, and community art and festival projects. His work has elements of humour and tells playful stories, connecting people to form shared worlds where they feel safe and free to express themselves. Steve's paintings and illustrations offer a delicious escape into your own imagination, with works that are like adventures, with strong figurative hooks to take the imagination of the viewer on a personal voyage of discovery through old world mysticism and early nautical expedition.
And that macabre beauty really inspired me for a long time, creating artworks, and that led into these kind of little shrines and dioramas and then automata, moving pieces as well.
I loved meeting Steve today. We talk about his amazing art and illustration practice and how he is so compelled to tell stories. He shares his passion for tinkering, building things, historical clockwork technology, all things Havana, festivals, and above all, how he loves to create work that makes people smile and bring joy to the world. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Mandy.
Nice to see you.
Oh, it's lovely to see you.
And it's really great to meet you. You've been recommended by Kelly Sunshine, who I interviewed quite a few episodes ago, and she's a good friend of yours.
Yeah, no, that was great that she recommended me to come and talk to you, and you live just down the road in Muriwai Beach, so it's just a fantastic opportunity to come and meet you and go to the beach.
Yeah, totally. And I thought that I was actually speaking with you in Wellington. But no, you were just down the road in Kumeu, which is very handy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome to Creative Matters.
Thank you.
And let's get into it. You have a really varied practice, and I know that our audience is going to find your story and your practice and process really interesting. So can we start from the beginning, please? And perhaps you can tell us where you were born and what sort of child you were.
Well, it's a very broad question, isn't it? But we'll start with the place I was born, because that's quite interesting in its own way, actually. I was born on a remote Melanesian island called Tanna Island, and my dad is a teacher and my mum's a nurse, but that was I think one of my dad's first teaching jobs, to go on this adventure to Vanuatu, and we lived in a little village underneath a live volcano, and I just went back recently on a trip. I got shouted a trip back there by one of my clients, actually. But funny enough, I think this is my first memory of going up the volcano, and it's a live volcano, so it's absolutely frightening and awe-inspiring. And looking over, there's live lava popping out. But as a child, I remember being very frightened and then scurrying back down the slope and just drawing in the sand. So I think that's my first memory of being creative and, drawing sort of spirals in the sand of this remote volcanic island.
How incredible. That's amazing. What a good start to life. And were you, as a child, in general, pretty creative?
Yes, that was my main focus was, and I think a lot of children naturally are. They just want to create and make things. I used to spend hours and hours creating little worlds out of plasticine, which I then carried on with my daughter actually, and we used to spend hours and hours making little villages and planes and boats and farms and cafes out of plasticine, and I used to spend a lot of time doing that in my own imagination and drawing pictures, and it's all I really ever wanted to do. I mean, apart from, because I grew up, when we arrived back from Vanuatu, we lived in Te Awamutu in the Waikato, and apart from wanting to be an All Black and play cricket like Lance Kens, it was drawing pictures and making things out of plasticine.
How amazing. And that's, you can actually see the connection with what you do now, with what you were thinking as a child.
Yeah, I think so. Creating these little worlds and getting lost in them, really, and having fun in that way, yes.
And so through high school, how did you find art? Was that something that was your little happy place?
I loved it at high school because it was such a, you do all your other subjects and, you want to pass the exam but the art room, regardless of what we're doing, I just absolutely loved it. So it was definitely like I can relax now. I'm in the art class. I don't have to feel stressed about, falling behind in maths and, doing all those other things. It was, it was a bastion. And then because my dad was a teacher, we moved around a lot. So, I went to school. We moved from Te Awamutu to Paru Bay in the far north. And then I went to school in Hamilton, and then my final years at secondary school in Wanganui. So I was always kind of on the, I was always having to reestablish myself, create new friends, meet new people, and the art room was just a real safe place for me. And I spent a lot of time there, screen printing or making ceramics. And when I was living in Wanganui, my Christmas present was to go to the Wanganui summer, what do you call it, like art school thing that they'd put on at the Polytechnic, and I'd just make clay dragons and, enjoy meeting kind of bohemian people, which was so kind of exciting and amazing for me, being a small town kid. I didn't really even know you could be an artist or musician or, I had a very small world, fun, happy world, but very small.
How interesting. And so when you were coming to the end of high school, were you thinking you would like to pursue a career in the arts?
Yes, it's all I ever wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist, but I hate to say it, but my dad was very disparaging of me doing art. In fact, he would tell me off for drawing, and I'd sort of hide my drawing away because he wanted me to read books, but I was more interested in drawing, and so he would sort of, he had that kind of mentality of like forcing you to do it. So that was a bit of a challenge, and so I felt like, okay, being an artist isn't really an option. I need to actually think practically, and what is the next best thing to being an artist, I thought at the time. So I studied graphic design at Wanganui Design School. And that was great, actually. I look back on it now. I mean, I would have loved to have been connected to the art world. I still feel kind of outside of it because I didn't go to fine art school, and
Really?
I'm coming from, I'm coming from a different perspective and a different way of thinking about it. But Oh, it is what it is, isn't it? And I do, I feel like a bit of an outsider in the art world, but yes, so I studied graphic design, and so I learned, how to use the computers and Photoshop and, all those programs, and learn about typography and setting things up for print, and typographical design with posters. And so it's all very good stuff, and it has helped me a lot in the diversity of the projects that I did later and all the different things that I got into later, because it was just like, oh, great, I'm setting up a big samba band in Wellington, and now I'm going to design all the posters for it and promotion for it. You know? So it was kind of...
It's a great skill. I mean, really, you can see the graphic design background through your work, some of your work. And so it must have, would have had some benefit for sure. Hey.
Yeah, I definitely think so, yes.
And did you enjoy actually working in that graphic design arena?
Not particularly. I definitely I needed to be an illustrator, which was the next step closer to becoming an artist. And I'm still an illustrator today, but and as I guess we can talk later, I sort of span a lot of different areas in the arts with my interests, but I know I try, I was doing a lot of Mac operating, which is the very technical side of it, and it just doesn't really suit my personality. And when a lot of things are depending on you to send this document off to print, and it has to be exactly right, and it was a bit challenging for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. It takes a certain person to kind of work like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm definitely an illustrator and artist, and so that incredibly pedantic technical side of it is not something that comes naturally to me.
So how long did you stay in that career?
Oh, well, I worked off and on. I traveled to London and worked in a couple of advertising agencies as a Mac operator. Some of them I did enjoy because, it all depends on where you land, and I enjoyed the banter. I enjoy having a laugh and, meeting some of the art directors who are real hard cases, And before I went to England, I was working on a children's book with this hero and friend of mine I got to know called Fane Floors, who was in Blurter, and he's a musician and illustrator. He did the animated start of the Radio with Pictures, if you remember that, back in the 80s.
Totally.
He did that angel that rises up, and he got me to do one of his prototype books, The Horse in Polka Dot Pajamas, and Len Cheeseman, who was a typographer in Wellington for Saatchi's, did the type. And when I was in England, I was like, oh yeah, I showed them this book that I'd done, and they're like, oh, Len Cheeseman did that. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, we know Lenny Sir Lunch a lot. I hope that's not offending to Len if he hears this. And so I enjoyed the kind of camaraderie of it, but I couldn't wait to get out of it and just become an illustrator.
And so that was your goal. You were thinking, this is going to change. How do I get myself into this new career? That's right. So what was the transition for you?
Oh, I just slowly took on more illustration jobs where I could, and there was a bit of crossover doing graphic design, but trying to add an illustrative component in it. One year I took on doing the Wellington Jazz Festival, so it's like designing the booklet, doing all the posters, and I did a kind of 1950s kind of Jim Flora illustrative, very jazz, bebop style illustration, and tried to get work from the then Learning Media, which did all the school journals and things, and a lot of famous artists like Colin McCann and various people have worked for them.
Yeah.
So I just sort of slowly edged into it, and then I just had enough working in that environment, and then just jumped into it and was very poor for a long time.
But you decided to devote yourself to full-time artist practice.
Yeah, illustration mainly, but trying to do my own painting and drawing and comics and things like that. Yeah.
Everything. And how old were you at that stage?
Well, I kind of had two runs at it really. When I left design school, I just was completely in this kind of like, what have I done with my last 3 years? I want to be an artist. I don't want to do this. And I went into a shop in Cuba Street and said, I saw this. That was back in the kind of 1998, maybe a little bit earlier. And it was this kind of acid jazz and dance music was just coming out. And there was this shop there was a couple of really cool shops doing really beautiful graphics on their T-shirts and things called Ripe and Finn. And I went into Finn and I said, I'd love to do some designs for your T-shirt, design some clothes. So, because also as a kid, I used to love designing clothes and screen printing, and I had my own little surf design label and things like that. My mum would sew the clothes.
Cool.
And I would screen print them.
Wow.
And I'd sell them to kids at school. So I was a little bit of an entrepreneur even back then. And I started to, I was washing dishes one night a week in a cafe. So yeah, I just don't know. I had this inspiration. I bowled in there one day and said, can I design clothes for you? And they were like, yeah. And so I started my own little label called Lounge and made designs for them. And we helped them screen printed T-shirts. And I was kind of selling these kind of illustrative designed T-shirts. And they came with a little comic. Each one came with its own little comic, and I've still got some of them.
Which you wrote? Yeah,
which I wrote, but they're very much illustrative based. And then I really just enjoyed that, and I was traveling around doing that, selling T-shirts and things like that, and then I went went on a bit of an overseas. My OE, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so when I came back, and that's when my daughter was born, when I came back from the UK, I had a stint working in advertising agencies in Wellington, very sporadic and very like just roped in here and there, a week here, a week there. And that's when I started to really, once again, kind of do illustration work. But it had always been very piecemeal. Like I was working as a landscape gardener over in the UK as well, and met some ladies who owned a Beatles memorabilia shop, and so I started designing Beatles posters and things with a little yellow submarine influence. And so yeah, I've done a few crazy little projects here and there to sort of keep myself going.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And then now, as an artist, you have all these different areas that you're involved with, like, you do public art and murals and that kind of thing. And then also animation and illustration of books, and you do commissions for businesses, and you do all these other amazing little projects.
Yeah.
So it would be really nice for us to kind of work through your practice and talk through, what you do and how you do it, basically. So just going back, when did you get to that point where you thought, right, this is my career now, this is what I do, and you focus yourself full time on that practice?
Well, I just made that leap and then just decided to do it. So that was a good 20, almost 30 years ago, and then just stuck with it.
Which is so good that you got there in the end, even knowing that your dad wouldn't approve.
The funny thing is, though, he was very happy in certain times. He was quite proud of me in certain times. Like, when I've worked in, because I have had periods where I've worked in film, so like I got roped. It's all very, most of my work has been very word of mouth, very spontaneous, as in I'll meet someone and then something will happen. So I got roped into working on King Kong, and then someone else roped me into working on The Hobbit. And when I came up here, I've been working on Lord of the Rings as a concept artist. And these have been little sporadic periods. I don't focus on film work because it's all encompassing and it takes all your time and energy.
And it's not necessarily long term.
And it's not long term, and you do kind of lose a little bit of disconnect with what your outside, the work outside of that. And he was very proud of those things, working for Peter Jackson, So in a way, he became proud of it when he saw that,
Yeah.
It wasn't just a sort of, because
for that generation.
It is, because they didn't see it as, and he was probably quite right. For a lot of my life is not a really practical way to make money.
But it must be hard with your kind of art practice that it's quite sort of reliant on projects. It's not just you in the studio making and hoping to sell it. I mean, that would be part of it, but a lot of it is project based, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've had periods it's always been project based, but I have had periods in the past where I've been able to dedicate 3 months solid to painting and then having an exhibition. And I've relished those periods to just deep dive into doing some painting, because I've been a self-taught artist and painter, trained as a graphic artist, but really enjoyed learning about paint and going deep into that.
So tell us about your paintings. Let's talk about those to start with. So what inspires you to create your paintings?
All my work, the common thread is a storytelling thread. So almost all my projects have an underlying story, that they're like a window into a world. The joy of creating depth, like a lot of my work has a lot of depth, and that is part of that, taking people on a bit of a journey each painting. And so I like to do stuff a little bit more figuratively generally, because it sort of sets up those kind of they're almost like storybook pictures, every one. And I love doing landscapes that are kind of very etheric, but tie into a New Zealand bush aesthetic, or but take people on a bit of a journey. So that's the common thread. And when I'm painting, I get lost in that story and evoking the imagery, like a dream. So that's what I really enjoy.
And where does that dream come from?
I have no idea.
Your head somewhere. And I mean, you're obviously inspired by Mexican Day of the Dead,
yes,
and other things. Can you tell us about that?
Wow, I love the peaceful and the tranquility of painting scenes, but I also love the kitsch, the super kitsch, and the sort of reference to Catholic kind of imagery. And the Mexican stuff is artwork and culture is so ripe and so vivaciously kind of fruity. And I went to Mexico in 20 odd years ago and went to the Day of the Dead celebrations. I love the macabre skeletons. When I was in Europe, I went to Kutnahora, I think that's how you pronounce it, a church made all the interior completely made out of bones. And that macabre beauty really inspired me for a long time, creating artworks, and that led into these kind of little shrines and dioramas, and then automata, moving pieces as well.
So interesting.
And I love tequila.
Well, that's good. So do we. We were just talking about margaritas with my husband before we started talking. Yeah. And that storytelling, which seems to go through most of your work, do you develop that story in your head and then need to sort of represent it visually, or does it develop as you're painting?
Oh, it can happen both ways. Sometimes the imagery appears first and then I develop the story around it. What I like to do is in my sketchbook have little thumbnails of each painting, very rough and very quick and small, and then I work out this kind of flow or story, or even a color landscape that moves through them. Like I did a few of I'm fascinated by history as well. So I imagine a story that has some sort of historical context in New Zealand, Aotearoa. So, I have this ongoing story which I'd love to make a graphic novel one day, which it spans a massive amount of time, and so a lot of my paintings are based on the stories, and that's why I like Bill Hammond's work, actually, because he has these characters, and he has volcanoes as well, actually, and I have an affinity with that as well, and I think he's kind of got a Mexican influence too, actually.
And so the volcano from your childhood, that does appear quite heavily through your work. Yeah, that had a big influence.
Yeah. And I used to have this reoccurring dream of some sort of Egyptian kind of bird, like I think it's I can't remember the name of the deity that it represents, but it's sort of almost like being chased by it. It was a little bit scary. So I don't, that's somehow connected. There's some kind of story going on there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And is the Catholic sort of references, are they because you are a religious person, or is it more because you are fascinated by the imagery? And
the imagery, really, because I was brought up Anglican, so it's kind of quite austere. So, the reliquary, having skeletons inside the church with beautiful gilt, cabinets. I love cabinets of curiosity. These amazing, and I want to create one as a part of some sort of stage show thing that I'll take to festivals. Like each little box having its own kind of history and this amazing relic. That sort of stuff really fascinates me.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I mean, you can see the connection with your 2D work with that, but it's a whole other way of telling your stories, I guess. And so is that the automata and box art? Is that what you're referring to in the diorama?
Yeah, more so with the diorama work.
Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a fascination with tinkering and building things out of wire and enjoying just being myself and just by myself, inside the studio and just tinkering. And I love the that historical aspect of automaton. They were kind of the peak of technology at one point and the height of fashion, and in that kind of industrial, I guess it's kind of the start of the Industrial Revolution, maybe earlier. Like whole areas and streets would be making one tiny little screw, and then another area would make the little cogs, and that kind of the tinkering away, and then the master clockmaker would come along and put them all together to make these beautiful, exquisite pieces of art, tiny and amazing. And the aesthetic of that and the tactile nature of that kind of clockwork technology, I guess it's a little bit steampunk, I guess. That really interests me, and it kind of excites me, and it has a historical element like there's a beautiful French automaton, which is a small boy, and all the cogs are set in the back, and he can actually be programmed. So it's almost like the first computers, and he draws and writes a letter, you know. I just love that, you know. It's kind of magical. Old world. It's very old world. I like that old world aesthetic and technology. Love creating, you know, these little suitcase or box art pieces that are like shrines, but then have this ability to make people smile or be surprised because suddenly they can move. You know, I've got a piece which I made from my favorite cafe in Wellington when I lived in Wellington was Deluxe Cafe, and it was just such an enchanting place, and I made a miniature of the cafe with all these skeletons that moved and served coffee, and the dog was licking up the coffee off the floor, and seeing people's expression and joy when you turn the little crank and all these little creatures move and do things.
Wow.
Is really lovely. Like, I like to make people smile and feel enchanted somehow.
How amazing. And how do you go, what's the process for creating something like that? Do you do lots of thinking and drawing and sketching?
Yes. I loved, you know, drawing the little plans, you know, on my sketchbook, thinking about it in 3 dimensions, working out how all the little crankshafts will work. You know, it's kind of, I've sort of like, I look at Leonardo, I mean, I don't compare myself to Leonardo da Vinci, but, you know, I love looking at his drawings and seeing that his imagination was working away playfully, trying to create these technical, you know, pieces that he made, like tanks and flying, you know, things. So it's a joy of creativity and imagining, and with that little kind of technical aspect, which is really fun. And that's also what I like about doing the film work, is because you're thinking in 3 dimensions, and you're making these concepts for props, for tables, for lathes, and, you know, medieval lathes, or whatever you're doing, and you're making these drawings beautiful in the world that they exist in. You're given the parameters of the aesthetics, but you're also doing a technical drawing which can be made by someone else. And I quite like bringing the concepts into that practicality, and then it's just an absolute joy to see someone with amazing skill, you know, a metal person or a woodworker, to create something you've drawn and then see it in 3 dimensions. It's very fun.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And so when you're working with the films, you mostly did the drawings and the concepts.
Oh yeah, I don't make any of it.
Did the building.
No way.
Yeah. How amazing. That would be incredible.
Yeah, it is a real joy, you know. Yeah. Like I loved Tolkien as a child, you know. I loved the world, and I loved the escapism of those stories. And so I have been lucky enough to work on the recent Lord of the Rings production, and I decided to work on it up here in Auckland because I'm just new to Kumeu. I bought some land with some friends and creating eventually a little bit of paradise up here, which is amazing for me to have that stability in my life finally. But, you know, I got roped into it by the lovely Megan, who is the head of set deck on that film. And I was like, yeah, cool, I'll do it, because I'd heard that the crew was a really nice crew, and I get to meet some people, and some really talented people, you know, blacksmiths and builders and model makers, and you know, a lot of them live out here in West Auckland. So that was a joy to actually come up here and also finally meet, you know, some
like-minded people.
Yeah, and it has been the story of my life, is just moving around as a child all over the North Island to every little small town, and then you know, finally, you know, trying to fit in somewhere.
Yeah, well, hopefully Kumeu's your last stop.
Yeah, I think so. I planted a lot of trees and I want to be around to see them grow.
Yeah, brilliant. And that film environment must just be so motivating, seeing all these incredible craftspeople.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of fun, you know. You up there at Smoko having it. They're just such funny people. And I live for that spontaneity of, you know, having a laugh with these you know, all these amazing people.
That's so good. And so, you know, already we've talked about your painting and your film work and as a concept artist and your, you know, other work that is more 3D, isn't it, really? It's quite sculptural. So, you know, you have got a whole lot of things that you do that probably have sort of connecting ideas, I guess.
Yeah.
And that amazing sort of more technical side of making things work. It's quite interesting how that's kind of come into your practice as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm that good at it, but I'm enthusiastic.
You love it, yeah.
I love it.
And that's a big part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then so with your painting, were you actually painting on canvas or how were you approaching that?
Painting on canvas or board. And I'm mainly using acrylics. And I had a studio with a lady called Fifi Colston, who I'd recommend for this podcast. And she's a wonderful illustrator. And she had found these paints and they had a medium which you could use to create a semi-translucent kind of, so you could layer up paints. And that was just like, I just got one tip from her and that changed my whole enjoyment and got me into painting on a deeper level, because you could slowly build up colors with layers of colors coming through and I just got lost in that, because, you know, I love depth. I love the viewer's eye to be able to go in and see deeply into the painting, create layers.
That would be great for that.
Like old stage sets, you know. I'm fascinated by that aesthetic.
Yeah, and you can see the connection with that idea and then your boxes, you know, having that depth where you're kind of looking into a space with 3D objects.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then as far as the murals go and the, you know, the street art, can you tell us about that?
Well, I've always loved to do murals, and it's just another extension of painting, and it's a nice challenge. It's quite a challenge working on that big scale. And I did a series of murals in Wellington in the very early 2000s with a theatrical kind of performance element to them as well. And I've sort of, in the last kind of 8 years, I've started to get back into doing them. And it's just a really fun opportunity to paint things on a big scale and I guess help create a joyful aesthetic within the city, which for the last kind of 15 years I've been really interested in theatrical and interactive experiences for people within cities and festivals and things like that, which is another element to my art as well.
That's another thing we can talk about.
Yeah, sorry, I was jumping ahead there.
No, that's
but the
all right.
murals, I just love doing murals. You know, it's just a fun.
And how do they happen? Are you commissioned to make something on a building?
Yeah, it's all pretty random. Yeah, well, I've had a great relationship with Jeff from Havana Coffee for years and years. And he's a very keen supporter of the arts and anything that's really fun in Wellington. I first met him when I was setting up a big community samba band. I came back from overseas, and that was one of my first missions, was to try and set up Wellington Batucada. And I roped in some other mates right at the start who were actual musicians, because I'm not a musician, but I'm just like an enthusiast. And so I would go and see Jeff and various other kind of cool businesses in Wellington on Cuba Street and get them to sponsor. And so I'd create these big parties, paint big murals and sets and sculptures for these parties that I'd put on to try and raise money to buy instruments, samba instruments from Brazil, and set up this community. So And that's still going strong, actually. I'm going down to Wellington on the 19th for the 21st anniversary of Wellington Batucada.
Wow.
And it's,
So Batucada, what is that?
It's a big samba bateria, so it's a big rolling street percussion band playing really sort of powerful, strong Brazilian rhythms like you'd see at the Rio Carnival with all the dancers and things like that.
That'd be amazing.
And we used to practice on Sundays and all go to the pub, and it's just a really nice community. And so I've had, Jeff has sponsored a lot of the things I've done over the years at festivals and things. And so I've I've done lots of work for them over the years and illustration work. And when they were setting up their Parnell roastery here, they were like, they found that they heard that I'd moved up here and they wanted to keep that Havana connection and someone that understands the Havana aesthetic. So I kept I used some of the ongoing and traditional characters and things and styles that they've had, took a lot of the colors from the packaging, which is an absolute masterpiece, the packaging.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
One of my old tutors from design school works on the packaging actually, and incorporated some new characters into it to once again to create new stories and new traditions, new mythology here in Auckland, and create its own home and help it to sit nicely, and I've painted myself in the mural as well.
Cool.
In an airship.
I love it. I'm going to put that photo of that in your blog post,
cool,
so we can have a look. So how did you actually go about creating that mural from beginning to end? What's your process?
Oh, it was quite challenging actually, because when you're so excited about, and it's huge, and creating something that really captures the essence, the irreverent quality and the color and the history, it's quite hard to pin all that stuff down. And it was quite a multifaceted wall. So it has a long bit with, windows underneath, and it has a roller door, and then some other bits, but they're all in different layers. And I wanted to try and incorporate some humor into it, as well as just a kind of a magical world. It's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Havana Coffee Works. Like when you go in there, if you go in there, dear listeners, you will see what I'm talking about. So I just tried to. It has a nautical element as well in their aesthetic. So and also Parnell has the ports. So I try to incorporate some of that, and so the aesthetic and the environment, try and incorporate that into it. And so because it is by the port and it has the sea element, I created these new characters, these Havana mermaids there. So, and they're kind of in the roastery. So it has got that central point of the actual roastery, capturing, roasting the beans. And then I was just like, well, I'm going to have some fun with this and create a Havana, the next step for Havana, which is, on the moon, Havana in space. So I've got this kind of space, Havana space lady drinking coffee on the moon with the rocket ship. So I was just kind of trying to have fun and create something that, is aesthetically really lovely and captures lots of color and movement, because it's dynamic. It's coffee and they're a dynamic person. If you ever meet Jeff, you'll definitely find out how dynamic it is.
It definitely feels like that when you look at it. It sort of draws you in. The color is so sort of powerful and striking and yummy. And then again, you are drawn in because it's that sort of whole story and so many interesting sort of aspects to it. And how did you go about, did you draw it up and then how did you get it on the wall? That's quite a big change.
It was a real rush, and because the opening was quite close, and when we finally got the go-ahead to go in, and I designed it all on my iPad on a picture of the building so it could fit perfectly, and I had to get it passed obviously by them and so I had it there, and then I just basically did it. I kind of like I looked at my iPad, my color version of it on my iPad, and then worked out roughly a scale and put a few key points on it, and then I just chalked up a few of those key points to my scale. So, and then I just had to go for it. So I didn't have time to. For some reason, I felt like it was too hard to project it at the time, because I was starting to work on the day, and I don't know, I didn't have a projector, so I just launched straight into it by plotting out a few little key points and then kind of doing it from there. I also had to paint some big parts of it at home because the surface was so uneven that I had. So he gave me these the art director of that project gave me some big sheets, and my new studio that I was building was just completely bare and just like framework, but it had a roof on it, so I could start working on it in there. And that actually gave me, and the scale was easier to work out on that. And then
so you didn't grid it at all?
I kind of did, but mainly just key points.
Not a proper grid.
Not a proper grid, no.
Wow, that's amazing. And then
fast and loose.
I can't imagine it. And did you use chalk initially for the outlines, or did you do did you paint one whole background colour?
I kind of just freestyled it.
Amazing.
I did a few little chalk bits, but mainly just freestyled it, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's the forgiveness of paint, isn't it? You can just paint over it.
Yeah.
But it was such a tight deadline. I had to race through it that I just had to do it. And so sometimes, though, that pressure, and you just get brave.
Yeah, it can be.
And you trust
thing.
yourself, and it worked.
And you used.
I wouldn't recommend it all the time.
No, it sounds pretty stressful. Did you use rollers and paintbrushes?
Yeah.
And no spray paint?
I used a little bit of spray paint too at points, because the surface was so uneven. The roller door just took me 10 days alone, and then I had to race through the rest of it that was on a flat surface, and roped in some mates to sort of paint flat areas, and then I could go over and do the detail as well. So, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And have you done many of those kind of projects?
I've done quite a few murals over the years, yeah.
And you enjoy them?
Yeah.
Well, it's another way for you to tell your stories, isn't it? Just on a larger scale.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And then you're part of the League of Live Illustrators.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and it sounds like an amazing artist network. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, it has been a very profoundly great effect, both on my professional practice, working with other people who have really great skills in that side of it. In terms of like just charging what you're worth, giving you the confidence to do that when you work with a collaborative group. And we've been going for like 8 years now, and Kelly Spencer's part of it, Yasmin Alofi, Megan Salol, Rebecca Whale, and we go into places, conferences and things like that, and do live illustration, but we're not the usual live illustrators that take lots of notes. We just pull out the gems and spend more time on doing illustrative and typographical kind of vignettes for the key points. So that's kind of we're not taking notes. We're really pulling out the gems and illustrating them, so we can spend a little bit more time, and it has more meaningful relevance to people, I think, and because people can see these very clear images and capturing the really important things, rather than screeds of notes and a few populated by a few illustrations, which then just gets stored away somewhere. Like, for instance, that project Positive. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I'm.
Yes, no, please go ahead.
Which was part of the League of Live Illustrators, which you might see the work, which was pulling out kids' ideas around anti-bullying and then illustrating them, and capturing these beautiful ideas that the kids had, like, I like you more than pizza. What a great thing to say, and then creating these beautiful and funny images. It's just much more powerful.
Yeah.
And it's just lovely working with a collaborative group, especially as an artist and illustrator. You spend a lot of time by yourself, and we have our weekly catch-ups, and we work together. We travel around
That's fantastic.
all parts of the country and listening to wonderful people, absolutely dedicated and profoundly skilled and caring and doing what they're doing. It could be health, it could be justice reform, it could be iwi working on their projects, and we go in and we listen to all these amazing people, and then we capture and help them to really solidify and capture what they want to do or where they're heading. And as an illustrator and an artist, it's really nice to feel that usefulness, or that you're really contributing and helping people by your artwork. And I guess that's why I like illustration a lot, because you do feel that, like, it's probably a hang up that I have, but it makes me feel very what I'm doing is worthwhile. It's not just a self-indulgence. I'm actually really like doing a job and helping people here.
Making a difference.
Yeah. And we get such positive feedback. And
that's incredible.
People treat it like treasures, especially a lot of the iwi that we've worked for,
And how does that actually, the League of Live Illustrators, so it is everything you do within that group is responding to something in real time. Is that right?
Yeah. You can't obviously keep up exactly with what's happening, but we usually have a note taker feeding us little bits, and we're pulling things out here and there, and just trying to go as fast as we can. It's actually very stressful.
Yeah, it would be intense.
Very intense and very exhausting. Like if I do a full day of that, I find I'll try and get back to my studio and work the next day. I'm exhausted, but you get that adrenaline and you just go for it.
Because you're listening and processing.
Yep.
And also sort of thinking about how to turn that into illustration, I guess, which is quite a big thing. But I love those posters from the Positive Project. There's Kia Kaha with the unicorn, so it's kind of very pop arty in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And simple, sort of flat use of colour.
Yep.
But really cool, and I love the way it's connected to kids and what they've come up with. So is the League of Live Illustrators, is that what you do all the time, or do you also come together for other projects and work together on things like murals?
Well, Kelly and I tend to work together sometimes on murals. The rest of the guys, it's mainly just the League of Live Illustrators. But we inspire each other in so many other ways, because we'll be, a couple of we usually work in pairs. So, we'll drive off to some marae or in the middle of the Coromandel, and we'll have lots of time to catch up and give each other advice on life and
chew the fat.
Catch up with whatever we're all doing on, because we're all working on our own projects outside of it. So that joy of that friendship over 8 years and that collaborative, working together and that support we each have as friends is just priceless, really.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So good. And a lot of artists probably yearn for that but don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that idea. And you've done quite a few different collaborations with different artists, Steve, and also people who are working in the arts who are not necessarily visual artists. So can you tell us about those projects?
Well, yes, that's an exciting part of being in the art world and the creative industries is, and the flaneur culture of Wellington, being able to bump into people and cafes and talk about ideas and get inspired and get things happening. And a city where you can walk around and bump into people, that's where the magic happens. And so from exhibiting at Deluxe Cafe in Wellington and popping in there for coffees and talking about, the latest sports and culture and everything, in that wonderful coffee field setting. I talked to Duncan Sarkis, and he's a writer, and I said, I've got these paintings are all part of a story, and I would love to work with a writer and develop the stories along with these visuals in some way. And he sort of took that on board, and then later on he said, why don't we do a project together? No, open-ended, see what happens, let's get together. And I'll get James Milne, aka Lawrence Arabia, together. So a visual artist, a writer, and a musician, and we will just come together and make something happen. And so we did, and we spent some joyous times connecting and going to old halls and booking them out and doing lots of those kind of writing impromptu kind of games, almost like sort of improv theatre type stuff, but with writing, and you've got 2 minutes to come up with this and that. And we did lots of really interesting creative ways of getting ideas and going deeper, and we ended up creating a story together, and eventually got called The Mysterious Secrets of Uncle Bertie's Botanarian. And it was with the aesthetic of my work and the other guy's interests, it's a kind of a parallel universe to Captain Cook, but in a very fantastical land where plants we kind of exaggerated that whole kind of Joseph Banks era where botanists were superstars, but where plants were fetishized. So they kind of replaced women in a way, in the sense that, like, you're lured in to the kind of exotic and erotic nature of plants and the wild world, and that Victorian disdain for pleasure. So it's a rollicking adventure story, but with a very twisted and fantastical play on that kind of period of adventure and sailing tall ships and things. So it's really fun.
So you also illustrate books.
Yeah.
As if there's not enough things that you do. Which is incredible. And I know you've got some sort of dreams of creating some of your stories into animations and maybe films. And so, can we hear all about that side of your practice?
Well, the first book I did, and it's my only trade book actually. I'd like to do more, but I don't know, I haven't really pursued it, but I do enjoy it. I had an exhibition at Deluxe and Cafe, and it had lots of nautical things. I love painting nautical things as well. And a lady, Robin Nathan, who is, some of you listeners may know, is Fat Cat and Fish Face, or now her new iteration is Flea Bite. She does a lot of kids' music. And my sister and I worked together a lot with her. But she bowled into the cafe and saw my work and said, do you want to do an animation? And I'd never done an animation before. I'd always wanted to, with this sea shanty song called The Wreck of the Diddley. And so my sister and I made this animation to the sea shanty song. I said yes because I liked the song. And my sister's an animator. She works for a TV show. And then that turned into a children's book. And Pot and Press published it. And now I've just done another one with Robin Nathan, and after it's from originally an animation that I did with another guy, Ross Payne, who I used to share a studio with, who's a great animator. It's called Don't Sit Under the Pooh Tree, and that won Best Kids Animation 2015. And so that is a children's book that we've written, and my sister is setting up a publishing company called Roofless, because her name is Ruth Templar.
Brilliant.
And that has just come out on Amazon, and so people can buy that.
So it's like a short film, animated film.
No, it's an actual children's book.
Oh, that's the book.
It's illustrated as a children's book now.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah.
What's the title again?
Don't Sit Under the Pooh Tree. Maybe we could post
kids would
the
love
link.
it.
Yeah, it's
I'll
hilarious.
post the link and a photo. But yeah, kids would love that, wouldn't they? Anything to do with poo.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun for kids.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Totally.
So you've got that sort of animation and illustration of books kind of combining, and that's a beautiful way to use your storytelling, natural storytelling, and sort of vivid imagination.
Yeah, making animations, making things move is really fun. I usually work with an animator, but, do the characters, the storyboards, the backgrounds, and set it all up so they can kind of manipulate them.
So good. And is there anything else that you do that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I really like doing, building theatrical things. I've got this, I like working with bicycles and light as well. And when I first, how I moved to Auckland was I was working on a project that involved musicians, and I was building these giant illuminated whales, and it was the thing that people could follow this family of whales. They were huge. They were about 5 meters long by about 2.5, maybe 3 meters high, and lit up, and people could follow them along. And along the way, on this little bicycle kind of track was all different performances, music, interactive things. And when I was up here about 3 years ago working on that, that's when I saw this piece of land and ended up moving up here. So I like doing stuff that makes people smile and that is interactive. And I've created like bicycle puppet shows. I was really fascinated by the Kamishibai Japanese bicycle storytelling tradition. And so I like doing stuff that I like doing stories, and I do have a performance bug or itch that I need to scratch, and I like making people laugh. So and bringing them into worlds that they feel safe, but also like they're in a really special magical place. And so that kind of street theater interactive performance and creating things, I love doing that as well.
You are such a creative. Your mind is just like, it's incredible what you come up with. And I know you've just had a 3-day party festival at your place, which you kindly invited us to, but we didn't quite get there.
That's all right.
But you obviously just love that sort of festival vibe and creating different experiences.
Well, I've done a lot of it for Cuba Duper, for a little bit for Shipwrecked and various festivals. And and
you've done artwork in those festivals as well.
And so I'd like to continue doing that stuff, but I don't know if this is jumping the gun, but one thing I have learned is not to stretch yourself too thin, because I have done that in the past, and just basically run myself into the ground. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you do have not only do you have a busy creative mind, but you're a busy person doing lots of different things, but things that you love.
Well, funnily enough, I had a bit of a kind of fallow period during the lockdown, and actually kind of retreated and sort of, I guess, recovered a little bit, because I did my last few years in Wellington. I'd really did too much, kind of burned myself out, and so I'm slowly coming. Steve Fest is kind of like my re-emergence, coming out of my chrysalis.
That's good. And you moved away from Wellington, which you were based down there for quite a long time.
Yeah, for a long, long time. Yeah.
And you built a tiny house on this land.
Yeah, well,
and decorated it.
Yeah, well, I actually built it in Wellington and then towed it up, which was a very full-on thing. and put it on the old cowshed concrete slab, and now I've built a studio connected to it. So finally, after the last 5 years, I have a place to work. So I'm very happy.
That sounds great. Well, it does sound like the butterfly has emerged. And you'll hopefully find your place out here. Yeah. So what are your main projects at the moment, and what have you got coming up?
Well, yeah, I've got quite a few things happening. My other collaborative team, the League of Live Illustrators, we've got work coming up with that all the time. I'm doing a shrine, a kind of mermaid deity taken from the mural I did for Havana Coffee Works, which I'm super excited about, which is very challenging, doing a sculptural piece at the moment, which is overdue, but I've got to get on with that.
And where's that going to be?
That's going to be at the cafe, and it's
the actual Havana cafe.
So and it's about like a meter by about 600 wide, meter tall, and so I'm excited. I can't wait to get lost in that. And I'm off to Boone Street Street Art Festival in a few days. So I'll be down in Hamilton to the 27th of November, and then trying to frantically finish off this deity for Havana Coffee Works, and then carrying on with some other bits and pieces, and then in my downtime, hopefully work on some of my own graphic novel ideas and other stories and comedy shows for festivals and things around the country in the summer as well. So
good.
Yeah,
you're a busy guy, but so good that you can be doing so many different things that really light your fire.
Yeah.
Hey, that's brilliant. So that brings us to our final questions. Can you talk to us a little bit, Steve, about your favourite artists and if they influence your work?
I think they all do in different ways and in various amounts. I made a little list in preparation for this interview.
We like this.
And I'll give you the list. I've written Bill Hammond. I've always admired his kind of dreamlike landscapes, and his colour sensibilities are very similar to mine. Colin McCann, I love the joy that he brings to painting. You know, the white paint onto the black, and the mood and the topography. I love his sort of graphic but yet very deep work. Ryan Hisker, he's a American painter illustrator, and just fruity, wonderful kind of camp superheroes and I don't know what retro kitsch bizarreness. And then I'm moving on to these are artists in different areas, but I love Noel Fielding and Julian Barrett, the writers and creators of The Mighty Boosh. And at a period in my life, The Mighty Boosh came along and gave me just such joy, and got me out of a little bit of a trough and made me look at the world through a sort of magical, interesting, exciting lens where you never know what's around the corner, and it could be just fantastic. Malcolm McLaren, because I felt that he was so influential with music and art, and he was at the zeitgeist of so many interesting things, and he sort of he felt that energy of the time, and with the music and all that sort of stuff.
And
I
the
love
clothing.
That. And the clothing, Duck Rock. I've still got that album. And then I've got I wrote down Jeff from Havana and Matt Wilson. They're like big cafe and coffee guys in Wellington, but they've created this aesthetic along Cuba Street and around Wellington, which is just amazing. And I think their art is creating these spaces and atmospheres for people to come in and feel safe and happy and buoyant. the spaces are filled with conversations and beautiful decor and color, but in a non-pretentious, very, very open to everyone kind of sense. And I think they're massive influences on the Wellington cultural landscape, even though they may not get the credit for it because they're coffee magnates and cafe kind of owners, but they're artists in their own right, I feel.
Yeah, so. And that is the vibe down there, isn't it? Around Cuba Street is so incredible.
Yeah. So, we're trying to recreate some of that up here in Auckland now.
Yes, we need it, don't we?
Yeah.
Good answer.
Thank you.
And as an artist, what would you say is your biggest challenge?
Time management. saying yes to too many things and then stretching myself too thin. Delegation and asking for help when you need it. And also factoring in time to do my own projects. Rather than just always doing stuff for other people all the time, which is good. You get paid, but and you need the balance to keep yourself fresh.
Exactly, and you've got a lot of things ticking along in your mind, haven't you? Stuff that you want to develop,
building up.
Yeah, which is great. It's good. It's a good problem to have. Too many ideas, but it's just finding time, isn't it? Often, yeah. And what would you say to your younger artistic self?
Focus on things and get more clarity. Learn an instrument and just stick with it. Don't be afraid to think big, which I'm still learning. Be a bit braver. And really, be brave and don't limit yourself. Don't be afraid of going big, which I'm still kind of learning. I do lots of things, but I feel like there's still a long way to go. And when I was younger, I was very, very much. I've come out of my shell a lot over the years. And so, being brave, don't be afraid to try new things, and be adventurous. I think that's what I tell myself.
You're already on that track,
to
a certain extent.
Definitely,
you're on the road, at least. And why do you think you make the kind of work that you make?
It sounds cheesy, but fundamentally, I really do like to make people smile and find a way for people to connect with each other. Just bring. I shudder when I say this, but bring some joy to the world. Warm up the atmosphere, so to speak. Not all my work is full of joy. Some of it has a dark, brooding, melancholy sense to it, but in a way, like Morrissey, I guess that's kind of a joy in its own way, in its stillness, and it's taking you to another place which is timeless and more meditative. But creating depth and stories, and just taking people to places which are special and out of the ordinary. I think trying to sum it up, but not doing a great job. But that's the sense good. I'm trying to.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to your work, isn't there? On sort of lots of different levels. It's not only visual, but it has quite a lot of meaning and stories behind what you're creating. So it's quite sort of multi-leveled, I'd say.
Yeah. and you do stuff and you don't even realize you probably do the same thing. And then later you're like, oh, okay, that's what that means. And that's why I did that, as you understand more about yourself through the work.
That's right. And you sort of make connections like all the way back to the volcano you talked about at the beginning.
Right.
You know, those connections that sometimes you're not aware of until you sit down maybe like this, have a conversation, and you're just like, I mean, there's just so many things connected, isn't there? In somebody's life, but also creatives' heads.
Yeah. And those subconscious things dwelling beneath the surface, but then they emerge sometimes, and you don't. It takes a little while for you to realize that they're all connected. Yeah,
totally. All right, Steve. Well, thank you very, very much for coming out to the studio, and I look forward to bumping into you at New World Kumeu and and other hopefully more exciting places.
Yes.
And lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. Yeah, it's been a real joy having a chat here.